Hey everybody, this is Containerizing Python Scripts for Beginners. Now, the reason for this video is I had the chance to work with a couple of data analysts, business analysts, Python developers, Node.js, or other developers who often write Python scripts to test things out or do some computations or etc. etc. And one thing that I faced was, or I saw, is people often find difficulty when they want to share the scripts or maybe run these scripts in a cloud environment or try and get it to a minimum production level. For example, let's say there's some script that does some computation or does some check with a cloud database, and they want to run this every day, maybe every 6 hours in a, and they want to run it in a cloud environment. For example, if you're using AWS, you want to run it in a EC2 virtual machine. If you're on Google Cloud, you want to run it as a cloud function, etc., etc. Now, what we'll try and achieve in this video is write a very simple Python script that simulates some computation and containerize it using a Dockerfile and try and run it. One good thing, one a very nice thing that I like about Docker containers is you can write a Docker file. You have your code with you. You can test it out in a local environment and try and expect it to work and kind of expect it to work in a cloud environment, provided that you have enough memory, enough storage, and you kind of can expect it to work in a cloud environment. Now there you will run into issues if you do not have enough memory in your cloud environment. For example, you have an EC2 virtual machine. If you do not have enough memory, there are issues where Docker just throws memory error. You might want to take care of that. Now, if you're a data scientist, or maybe you're in academia, if you're a business analyst who often write Python scripts, this might just come in very handy. Now, I'm going to open my terminal, and we'll just write up a Python script, write a very basic Docker file, and try and understand how this works. So I have my terminal here. I've got an empty directory. And the first thing I'm going to do is, so when you often write Python scripts, you kind of use a lot of third-party libraries. And what you do is have a virtual environment. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to say virtual env space env, activate it. So I'm going to say source env slash activate. This works on Linux and Mac. On Windows, it's like source \env slash script slash activate, I'm guessing. And you can just look that up. And what I'm going to do is try and install a library. So let's just say pandas. Let's say I'm using pandas. I'm going to say pip install pandas. Cool. I have pandas installed, so I can just say pip freeze, and that's there. Now, it's a really good practice to have all the packages that you're using in a text file. So it's often called requirements.txt. So you could just do pip freeze and redirect that std to the std, redirect the std out to this file. So consider requirements.txt. That's there. If you just cat that out, we have that there. Now let's say our Python or our Python application just one script, and let's just write that as app.py. I'm going to say from time import sleep. That's how we're going to make, simulate some computation. And let's just write a function that says compute, and all it does is sleeps for some time. So let's just say seconds and set an integer, and we're going to say print starting work, and I'm going to say sleep of seconds. So we're going to sleep for x seconds, and say print, let's say completed work. Completed work. We do not need the f string. We're not injecting anything, and just return. And say if underscore name equal to main. We will say we'll take a random digit as the delay. So I'll just say delay equal. I'll just import the random module. So we'll say from random import rand int. Let's say rand int of, let's say, 1 to 9, and just pass that delay to the compute function. I'm going to say compute and pass the delay. Let me just print that delayed seconds. So instead of seconds, I'm going to say delay. There you go. So very easy Python script that does some computation. Let's just test that out. I'm going to say Python 3 app.py. Let's see if it works. So the delay is 7 seconds. So it's going to start the work, sleep for 7 seconds, and just say completed work. Now, this is a very easy task, right? You can just write print hello world and get away just to test this out. Now, let's start with the Docker file. So I'm going to say when Docker file. You do not have to explicitly say or give the name as Dockerfile. You could just say dockerfile.dev, dockerfile.staging, dockerfile.prod, just just the way you like. The default is Dockerfile, and the first thing we want is the base image, or on top of what we want to run our Python script. So I'm going to say from Python 3.10. So it says we want to use Python 3, Python specifically Python 3.10 version. Now, this is a very big image or very big base image. You could always have smaller images using Alpine version or the Bullseye or the Slim version. I'm just going away with Python 10 because a lot of the data analysts often, if you're using the Alpine image, you might want to install some Linux libraries, and you often data analysts, they did not care about making the image smaller. They just wanted to get away with the task. So we're just going to say Python 3.10, and the first thing we want to set is where do we want to copy our code inside the Docker container. So I'm going to say that's done using workdir. So I'm going to say dot slash, or let's say slash my app. That's where I like. So, and if we look inside here, let's just copy the requirements.txt first, and say that would come from the copy command. So I'm going to say copy and say requirements.txt to dot says, hey, the current location of where I'm inside the Docker container. I'm going to say run to try and install it. So I'm going to say run pip install -r requirements.txt. -r said recursively just go through the file, install every package inside it. And now I want to say copy my actual code. So I'm going to say copy app.py to my current location inside the Docker container and execute it. I'm going to say cmd. I'm going to say Python 3 code app.py. Cool. That's it for the Docker file. Very easy. You can just get up and start running with this. Now let's exit out of there. So the next step would be to build the Docker image. So what we would say is a Docker build -t, which is to give the name of the image or tag the image. I'm going to say my app and give the tag as latest, and say space dot, which is telling the context or where to find the Docker file. Now, if you had named the Docker file as, let's say, Dockerfile.dev for the dev env, or Dockerfile.prod for the prod env, you would say -f and give the name of the Docker file. Since we named it, let me just complete that, Dockerfile.dev and dot. Since we have it as Dockerfile, we are not required to provide this. So we're going to say my app latest space dot. It's starting to build. Okay, so we got an error. Let me just go back to Dockerfile. Okay, so the image is wrong. So Python 3 3.10. Let me just fix that, and cool. So our Docker image has been built. To check that, you could say Docker image ls. Let me just grab the my app image because I've got a lot of other images on my system. So there you go. So I've got my app there. I've previously tested out, so I've got 3 minutes earlier. For you, it would say like 5 seconds ago, 10 seconds ago. And to run this, you would say Docker run my app, and the container would just start running. Now, if you've noticed one thing, let me just run that again. So if you notice this, the output from our script or our Python application did print to the console once the container just exited. So After the entire process, that was when the std out or the print statements actually printed to the console. We do not want this behavior. What we want is every time a print statement is printed inside the Docker container, we want it to reflect to our host system. So what we're going to do is say we're going to open the Docker file and say set an env equals python unbuffered. So what it tells is, hey, I do not want you storing all the Docker logs inside a buffer. I want you to immediately spit out all the logs. So let's just build the Docker image. So every time you change the Docker file, you kind of have to rebuild the image. So that's done. So if I would say Docker run my app, that would just immediately print out. So it's waiting for 8 seconds now. That's done. Now, this is a very simple, very basic, or the easiest way to get started with Docker. You could have a lot of optimization starting with the Docker file itself. You could just have Python 3.10 Alpine and the image size of the image. So currently it's Docker. Currently the image we have is, if you would look, say Docker image ls, grab my app. It's 1.1 gigs. It's kind of big for what we have now, what we have here. You could just get it to maybe 50 MB or 100 MB with multi-stage builds even. The idea was to, hey, I'm a data analyst, I'm a business analyst, I'm a Node.js developer. I just want to test this script out in a EC2 virtual machine or some other cloud provider, or I have local server. I just want to get this up and running, or I just want to share this script to my friend and, hey, expect him to able to run this script using just one or two commands. Here you go. This is one method.